My career choice has changed over the last couple of decades. Currently, I'm a high school football coach, and then I own a sports performance training business. I've been doing it for about 17 years, and it's something that I have a passion for. Early on in my life, I thought that financial success was extremely important to me, and what I've learned is that being significant in people's lives is what's important. Helping them find their way, motivating them to reach their goals and dreams is something that really drives me. And so getting involved in the sports performance industry and getting involved in coaching has given me the opportunity to motivate and mentor a lot of young athletes and a lot of young adults and help them reach their goals. And so that's ultimately where my life has gone. Now, transitioning into the next chapter of my life and being a part of the master's program and getting back into college, what I really found is that my passion and my calling that I feel like God has kind of put into my life is to getting into the academic world and hopefully becoming a professor and being able to teach at either a university or at a junior college. And it's kind of transitions over to still having the opportunity to mentor people. Now I'm just doing it more in an academic setting. So I look forward to that. As far as my leadership styles are concerned, I would say that I have two different types, autocratic and democratic. Autocratic, I would say, because of the industry I've been in and because of where my life has been over the last 15 years working with young adults, a lot of them they know what their goals are, they don't have the direction on how to get there. And so by being more of an autocratic leader, having my input and my rules and regulations and for having what they need to follow to get there, it's kind of set up their stepping stone or their platform on how to reach those goals. And so that's where I would say autocratic leadership style is one of my styles. But ultimately, what's transitioned over the years, I've become more of a democratic type of leader as these young adults have gotten older, as I've worked with more people. What I've learned is that I need to find out what their needs are. What their wants are. I know the ultimate goal is for them to reach something, but what are they looking for personally to help them get there? And so by being a part of the democratic type of leader, we have input and what they want to do and what their concerns are and their fears and what their strengths are. And we kind of mold that all into getting them the steps they need to take to reach those goals. So those are my two types of leadership styles. The strategies that I use that I think are extremely important in leadership, ultimately communication, and it works in all aspects of our life. Communication becomes very important as we become our parents, as we become spouses. As a business owner, I have to stay in contact with my athletes, with my employees, with investors, and we have to be completely honest with each other. And so I think that that's extremely important, communicating. As we get into the academic world, as a professor, it's extremely important that I stay open and with my students, because I need them to know that I'm there, that I'm present in their life, and that I'm going to stay in their life and that I'm going to help them out as well. So that's extremely important to be a part of that. There was a study done in 2011, and it said when autocratic leaders become an option, uncertainty and self-esteem predict implicit leadership preferences. And basically what the article said was that they did a study on people with low self-esteem and people with high self-esteem. And what they found was those that had lower self-esteem, they needed more of an autocratic leader in their life. They needed somebody that was going to give them the direction on which they needed to go and then give them the steps to do it. And people with higher self-esteem, they were more relied on democratic leadership because they knew what they were trying to accomplish and they wanted to bounce it off of each other on what they could do to get there. And so that's extremely important when you're talking about communication, is finding out what their needs are and having that open line of communication so that we could all get to that point, right? And so as far as communication is concerned, how do we communicate people to kind of get to the next level of their life? Well, finding out what they want to accomplish and being open with it, and by having them know that we're present in their life, also allows them to allows them to let us hold them accountable. And so in 1972, Steve did a study. It was called Berlow's Communication Process Model as Applied to the Behavioral Theories of Maslow, Herzberg, and McGregor. And basically what this study said, and it kind of goes into Berlow's communication steps, is that the hierarchy needs that Maslow talks about once lower level needs have been satisfied, then there's really no motivation to reach higher needs. And so what it essentially says is that people aren't motivated by nature. They're not motivated to take steps that they need to take. They need somebody to kind of guide them along and push them. And so by being in an open line of communication, we're able to see as leaders, okay, they reached this goal. This is what they wanted to accomplish. How do we challenge them to get to the next level? And then that's our job through the communication to get there. And then that leads into vision. And vision is one of the most important ones to me. I think vision is everything. I think vision is ultimately what keeps us going through the challenges and obstacles that we face. As a leader, if we can sit down with the team, if we can sit down with students, if we can sit down with our organizations, and we can show them that vision is ultimately what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we're trying to get to. We're going to go through all the challenges. We're going to go through all the obstacles that we're going to face, and it's just normal in life. But if we stay true to the vision that we're trying to accomplish, we can get through anything. And so vision is very, very important. And then finally, keeping our followers intellectually stimulated as well as ourselves. Intellectual stimulation basically means that we keep them growing. We keep them wanting more knowledge. Knowledge is power, and it goes both ways. It goes from us giving knowledge or helping the students gain knowledge through things that we teach them, but ultimately it comes from us having that drive to become more knowledgeable and learn more ourselves. And so those are the areas that we can, as leaders, the strategies that we implement is going to help others become successful through that process. Now, in saying that, there's different types of learning styles. Obviously, there's kinesthetic, our physical learning, auditory, listening and hearing, and then visual, by what we see. And everybody learns differently. And so as a leader, we need to find what ways different people that follow us learn through. What I think is extremely important, well, an example of that is in the International Journal of Advanced Nursing Studies. They did a study in 2016. It was called Assessment of Visual, Auditory, Kinesthetic Learning Style Among Undergraduate Nursing Students. And so they did a study on how these nursing students were able to learn, which ways did they learn the best. And what they found was that females learned better through auditory learning and males learn better through kinesthetic learning. And so what that basically says is that everybody learns different. And what I've learned and what I teach now in my training business, and I've had great success, is that we use all three facets of learning. So when an athlete comes in, we are doing things where they're physically involved. They hear us talking to them while they're doing it, and then they visually see it because we have mirrors that can show them what they're doing the whole time. And so why is that important? I think that's important as we teach others as well. When we have students in a classroom, some of them may be able to read a book and learn from that. Some may need to see videos, and that's how they learn. Others, they may have to get physically involved and go out and see what it's all about. And so as professors and as leaders and as coaches, I think that our job is to find all three ways that we can teach so that every student or every athlete or every employee has a way to learn through that. So those are the different ways of learning. Now, if we don't do all that, then it goes into being unsuccessful as a leader. And I think the three most important things are communication. If you're not communicating, you're not giving your student or your employee or your athlete, you do not have a right to challenge them. You do not have a right to hold them accountable because you're not present in their life. So non-communication is very, very hard to keep a leadership going. Being unorganized as a leader or not up to date, as a professor, if we're not keeping up to date with our grades, if we're not keeping up to date with the feedback, if we don't have the proper curriculum in place and we're scrambling to try to find things all the time, we're not going to keep our students engaged. And so being organized or not being organized is another detriment as a leader. And then finally, being disconnected from students' needs. If all we're worried about is our personal life and we don't know how to separate our personal from our professional life, and we are selfish in our behaviors and we're just worried about our own needs, and we're not looking at the needs, and we disconnect from the students, we're ultimately going to lose the students, because what it comes down to is the students don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. And so if we're present in their life, then they're going to want to stay engaged. But if we become selfish in our life and just worry about our own personal needs, then many times we're going to lose those students. So being disconnected is a way to do that. And then ethical considerations. Ethics are a big part of our daily life, especially being in a public eye as a professor or as a coach. We take on a lot of ethics, and we have to walk a different life. We're in the spotlight. And so character is extremely important, professional as well as personal. And I think it goes hand in hand. You know, professionally, it's just showing respect for our employees, our peers, you know, any subordinates, any followers that we have. It's extremely important that we respect what their needs are and respect their life and the situations they may be going through. But then on a personal level, because we're in the spotlight, many times we may be out in the community and run into an employee or run into an athlete that we work with or run into a student that we have. And so I think it's important that we conduct ourselves, you know, as the best we can. An example of that would be, you know, out at a bar or being public intoxication while students, you know, having dinner with the family and they see us. So it's extremely important that we have a high value of character when we're in the public's eye. And then the big one right now, the social platform right now is biased towards gender, race, and religion. And ultimately it should be. You know, one of the things that I think that we have is that there is a bias as far as I shouldn't say that. I think most of us have an underlying prejudice. And what I mean by that is it's not towards a race or a religion or a gender. I think we just have an underlying prejudice in the way we judge people, from the way they dress to the way they act to the way they look. And so that affects people down the road. And so that's something that we really have to look at. There was a study in 2015 that said what happens before a field experiment exploring how pay and representation differentially shape bias on the pathway into organizations. It was out of the Journal of Applied Psychology. And what it said was this. It said, we found that when considering requests from prospective students seeking mentoring in the future, faculty were significantly more responsive to white males than to all other categories of students collectively, particularly in the higher paying discipline and private institutions. And so what it was basically did is they sent out information and they told the gender and the race of the students. And what they found is that those faculty were more inclined to work with the white males. And I don't think it had, I don't want to sit here and judge and say that it had anything to do with the fact that they were just racist people. It's just more that we have our own underlying prejudices, and we need to get rid of those. That's something that as a professor and somebody in a place of power, we don't have the right to judge people. Our judgment should be on their actions and what they do as a person. So that's extremely important. Academic freedom. There was an article written in CNN that basically talked about the University of North Carolina and the academic fraud that took place over the course of 14 years. And it said that they had a paper class. And basically what it did is athletes could sign up for a class. They would have to write one paper on it, and then they would be graded, and most of them got a B or an A on it, and it helped them stay eligible. And so from our standpoint is when I talk about grading is what are we looking for? Are we trying to get students to become the best they can possibly be, or are we just trying to pass them in a class? And that's on us to hold people accountable. But part of that goes back to the communication that we're trying to get them to become the best they can possibly be. And then finally, interpersonal relationships would be friendships that we develop over time. We spend a lot of time together with peers and with our students. And so ultimately there's going to be friendships, and where do we draw the line and what do we do with that? And is there a line that needs to be drawn? You know, is there relationships that can last a lifetime? And so we just have to be aware of that. And then finally, the ultimate goal for me and what I'm trying to accomplish as a leader, and I think where you go and you have success as a leader, is transformational leadership. Transform people. How do we get those people to move in their life? How do we move them in a direction that they're going to be successful? How do we change lives is basically what it comes down to. The ultimate goal for me is to leave a legacy. When it's all said and done with me, I want to know that I had an impact on many lives out there that helped them become successful parents, become successful spouses, become successful employees, become successful business owners, whatever it may be, that they know that Keith Corey at some point had an effect on their life. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And it all goes back to serving. As this says, serve others, serve men. That's what Christ came to do.